Hi, I'm a small farmer, and I wanted to talk about this article the New York Times ran about a farm closing down because this article is hot stinking garbage. Let's get into it. This article tells a very time-worn story about a small family farm pushed out of business with a little extra twist of, well, they're a Trump supporter and it didn't work out for them. Let's try and understand their feelings about it. Now, here's the thing. That time-honored story of small family farm getting pushed out, people keep writing that because it's easy to write, but it is not what happened here. This is a wealthy family that made some mistakes. The family in this case, who owns a farm, their dairy farm was literally an expensive hobby, and they finally decided to stop doing their expensive hobby and losing money on it. That's what actually happened here. We should talk about what's actually happening with this family financially, right? Next, we need to talk about how we in the US in general are really bad about grappling with farms and money in a real way. We have a really hard time wrapping our heads around the fact that the misty, nostalgic family farm kind of farm and the farms where money happened kind of farm are the same farms. And I don't know why that's so hard to do. Homes are the same thing. We have a lot of sentimental feelings about our family homes where we grew up, but we also understand they're a financial asset and there's a market for them. This shouldn't be so hard to understand. Farms are just the same way. And it's one thing when the public at large doesn't get that, but if you were a journalist who is presuming to write about agriculture and you can't wrap your head around that, you're gonna write a bad article. And a writer who is writing about agriculture who cannot do that is the blind leading the blind. Y'all gotta stop doing this. Just poking in to let you know, I've got some really mixed feelings about this because journalism and publishing are real jobs that are useful and important. And convincing everybody that journalists are bad and evil is dictators' favorite thing to do because they really need to not have a free press. So with that being said, the vast majority of news and publishing and media in general are doing a god-awful job of reporting on agriculture. The fact that Americans think farmers are poor when in real life they've been out-earning non-farmers every single year since 1997, the only reason that's possible is because nobody in these entire industries has bothered to fact check for decades. That's kind of a big deal. Our farm policy is just funneling more and more money towards mostly wealthy conservative landowners, and we should be talking about it, but we can't because everybody's like, no, they're poor. I just know it in my heart, and I don't need to fact check that ever. That is profoundly messed up. And it's especially a real problem because we do have farmers who are not that wealthy trying to compete and stay afloat in a business that is mostly wealthy. So for these farmers who are less well off, knowing that you're competing for land, workers, equipment, all that jazz with literal millionaires really helps you navigate and tune your decisions. If you really love farmers so darn much, then you're gonna want us to have good information about ourselves and the financial realities of our own business, right? That just makes sense. So this fear that I see people have of talking about this, it's not coming from a good place and it's not helpful. It is just helping the wealthiest people in agriculture pull the wool over everybody else's eyes. It is not helpful. Stop it. When the folks who write the news and books and documentaries about farming just fail so hard at basic fact checking, they tell a made up story about how most farmers are poor for literal decades, misleading everybody. What are we supposed to say about that? Thanks. Good job. And I would so prefer to collaborate and work constructively with people who write the news and books and all that, to get the public a truthful picture of who farmers are and how I and my colleagues actually make our decisions. But I've been working that angle for years and gotten basically nowhere. The sense I get from years of trying to work through the right channels is that everyone in that business is just terrified that farmers might yell at them. That's what really drives how they report. So since that's the one thing that folks apparently know how to respond to, then I guess we have to try that. When you report badly on agriculture, it might get a farmer to yell at you. The farmer is me. Back to the program. All right, so this Butter Ridge farm in the article, we got to talk about what's going on with them financially. There's a lot to unpack here. Just off the bat, they have 326 acres, so this family owns quite a bit of property. And again, this land rich cash poor thing is bullshit. Because one of the things they're doing on this property, in addition to running a dairy farm, is fracking leases. They're doing a RuPaul out here. So this farm family told the reporter, yeah, we've got 8 fracking wells. Now, believe it or not, you can do the math to find out how much money people are making from their fracking wells. To give it a conservative amount, the lifetime value of their wells is going to be about $400,000. That's not Powerball money, but enough to rebuild your farm in a way that's going to be more lucrative. And this family did reinvest a quarter of that money into running the farm. I don't know what happened to the rest of it. Because the writer just didn't ask. And when they reinvested that $100,000 into the farm, what I noticed and what sticks out to me is they reinvested it in things that are just not gonna make money. From what I can see in the article, this family decided to keep doing just bulk dairy, right? If you are trying to keep a farm alive, The biggest financial risk to your farm is just selling a bulk commodity, like just plain old Jane corn, plain old Jane soybeans, the same bulk milk that everybody else is growing. There's other things you can do with that $100,000 that would have made them a lot more money. They could have upgraded to organic, built their own creamery to make cheese, ice cream, butter, yogurt. That is a great way to make more money, and they certainly had the capital to do that from that fracking income. They just, for whatever reason, chose not to. They chose to keep doing what they were doing, which is sell cheap bulk milk. You can get away with that cheap bulk milk business model if you have thousands of cows. And they don't. They tried to do a we have thousands of cows business model with about 100, 150 cows. That's why the farm wasn't making money. They made very poor business decisions. Oh, they also have a cell phone tower lease on their land, so that's another source of passive income. By the way, if you look at this farmer income chart, you will see the median small family farm is making about $30,000 in unearned income. If you have land, you can rent it out to people for a lot of different purposes. Solar, wind, cell towers, fracking, hunting leases. Like in the fall, people will pay to come hunt on your land. You can monetize farmland in so many different ways. And a lot of them are even sustainable. On top of that, you can also just build a viable farm business, which it looks like these folks just straight up failed to do. Something else that sticks out to me about this article, it talks about how the dad of the family farm, I think Brian, passed the farm on to his son, but lately he's been spending a lot more time at the farm working. Based on my conversations with other dairy farmers around the country, that probably has something to do with all the immigration crackdowns. A lot of your small dairy farms of this size need workers, and that's mostly going to mean immigrants. So when a small family farmer of about this size says, and then we've had to have our family come and help out with milking all of a sudden, that says to me they lost workers because of the immigration raids. Now, I understand why a Trump-supporting farmer wouldn't mention that in his interview, but it bears mentioning. And if I were a journalist writing a profile about a Trump-voting farmer and the problems that he's having because of Trump, I might ask some questions about the labor situation. That doesn't seem to have happened here. This is such bargain basement, incompetent reporting. So this is going to be a little bit difficult to talk about, but something that I have noticed is the more hoorah red meat conservative a farmer is, the worse their business is. Because both of those things are tied to an inability to do self-reflection, an inability to say, the reason I'm not succeeding is because of me. The more somebody has that personality trait, the more they tend to run a bad business because they can't notice their own mistakes and fix them. And the more they tend to run more and more reactionary politically. Because they can't accept responsibility for their own problems and do things in their life to fix it, they have to blame someone else. They have to find a scapegoat for emotional reasons. These are people who engage with the world on a very emotional level and don't think shit through. That's why they're having financial problems, and that's why they fell for a con man. It's certainly maybe not a nice thing to say about people. It's not politically correct. But in my experience, it is the truth. And if you want a food system that functions, maybe we should think about who is in charge of the land, who owns it, and why. Are we going to help incompetent people stay in business just because they're there? Is that really what we should be doing? Those are some real questions we should be asking ourselves, because we are being asked by these farmers, by these people, to bail their butts out after making a series of bad decisions. People like that, who make bad decisions and then get bailed out, are not suddenly going to change. They're not going to get better. That's just the life they're living, and they're going to keep making mistakes and asking for bailouts. That means that we as a country are on the hook financially for fools. And it also means that our food is at risk because of fools. That's something we should really be thinking about in a serious way. Should we be bailing out fools just because they own land? Or should we maybe be thinking, that's a great time to get new people in here. Maybe folks who think about stuff a little bit more, can run a competent operation. Because for every farmer like this, there's a couple of workers who actually pay attention to stuff. They're the ones who keep it running. So maybe instead of deporting them, if we help them get into the business for themselves, our food supply might be a lot more secure. That's a thing we should think about. And that's the kind of real critical thought that these soft focus profile pieces are never going to do. Yeah, soft focus profile pieces are a nice part of this complete breakfast of journalism, but that's all we're getting about farmers right now. There's not a lot of critical reporting about how they got there, and there's no critical reporting about what it does to us to keep bailing them out, what it means for our future, what it means for our food stability. So these soft focus puff pieces are nice, I guess, but they're not going to get the job done. They're not going to help us figure out our future. But puff pieces are basically all the journalism we're getting about agriculture right now. That's something I would like to fix. We just don't have anybody writing the news who seems to know how to think critically about agriculture, and that is going to be a huge problem. This is a whole rabbit hole for a different time, but this kind of puff piece reporting is really doing the devil's work in keeping our nation trapped in feeling like we have to support these guys and not seeing that there are alternatives, that we can stop bailing these dudes out and start getting new people on the land who know what they're doing, who are thinking about it, who are trying to do a good job, instead of just having this very upper class. There's a lot of people in agriculture who see it as a lifestyle where you receive things, like you inherit the land from your family, you receive that, you receive money from the government, you receive taxpayer support, you receive cheap labor from immigrants. It's a lifestyle where you receive things. It's a lifestyle of getting stuff from other people. And people raised with those mental habits might not be the people to take us into the future. I'll just say that. But as long as this is the only way we discuss agriculture, here are these people who deserve your help. Here are these people who are in a bad spot and we have to help them out. When that's the only way we talk about agriculture, we keep ourselves trapped with these people at the helm of our food system. And that's a real disservice to ourselves. Anyway, that's a rabbit hole for a different time. We got to talk about our thrilling conclusion, which is emotions in agriculture. To wrap it up, we should talk about why we, the public, keep falling for tear-jerky stories like this about farmers who, keep turning out to be millionaires. Why are we so bad at understanding agriculture? And I know the easy answer is, well, we're just city folks, we don't understand. You don't have to understand agriculture to fact-check the fact that farmers are wealthy. You don't have to know anything about agriculture to understand that farmers are millionaires. That's basic financial data. That's not like the inner workings of a combine, okay? That's just basic how society works info. And yet we keep missing that too. So what's going on here? I think at the bottom of this, a lot of us have been taught that agriculture is a thing you feel about, but you do not think about it. It is not for you to think about agriculture because you're just a city dweller and you can't possibly understand. This whole you're just a city dweller and you don't understand is gaslighting. It's teaching you that it is not for you to think about agriculture. Your job is simply to receive tear-jerky talking points and respond emotionally. That's what's going on. That's the public being taught that we should never ask questions and that we should never even try to think critically about agriculture. We are taught that that is not for us to do, aren't we? And as a farmer, yeah, I can get frustrated sometimes because there's really important parts of my job that I will explain to people over and over again in very clear terms and they just kind of go, I don't get it. But that is also just part of having a job that somebody else doesn't. They're not going to understand every single little part of your job. That's normal. I actually kind of work pretty hard to not let that get to me and not turn into a crank about it because that's not a special farmer problem. That's just how people having different jobs works. What is going on with farmers goes way beyond that because we as the public are being asked to financially support these people. And then if we ask any questions, we're gaslit and told it's not for us to do that. And so the public's relationship with agriculture becomes a thing of we're just told that we should feel scared all the time. And the only way to solve it is throwing more money at farmers. And this just turns into a thing where the U.S. public is being told all the time, if farming is collapsing, throw us more money, that'll fix it. And then the next year, the same thing happens all over again. At some point, I think we ought to be asking some questions. Why are you guys always on the verge of collapse? What's going on? How come all this money we're sending you never seems to fix it? What's happening over there? I just think it's really important for the public to understand that what you read in the news about how the sky is always falling in agriculture, that's a PR campaign that's just always ongoing to shake money out of you. That's all it is. And I wish it weren't true. Like, as a farmer, I can certainly tell you, yeah, we do have problems from time to time. That is part of the job, like it is with any job. But yeah, pretty much everything the public knows about agriculture is the result of a PR campaign designed to shake money out of us. Nobody in the modern United States is farming because they're a poor peasant and they have to do it. Everyone in the farm sector is here by choice. Most small farmers in the U.S. nowadays are millionaires with a six-figure income. Yes, really. Yes, that's after farm debts and expenses. These are not poor people. And I don't think the public should feel like y'all owe us farmers anything. I spent a lot of my life working for farmers and was finally able to become a small farmer myself because I finally made it to the middle class. That's how this works. We don't really do struggling small poor peasants in this country anymore. Unless you look on reservations, which most journalists who want to write stories about poor struggling peasants don't do. So, food for thought. You are being lied to on a colossal scale. Everything you read in the farm news it's lobbying and it's talking points, and it is being done specifically to shake money out of you. This is a shakedown. Farmers shot themselves in the foot. They made a bad gamble when they backed Donald Trump. And now they're having to pay for it, and they don't want to. They want to make you pay for it. That's why all this is happening in the news right now. It's a very real, concerted PR and lobbying campaign that is targeted at you. If we want this to get better, we have to learn how to say no to farmers. We better learn how to look a millionaire dead in the eyes, watch him be sad, and tell him that's your problem, not mine. Go deal with it. You got this, buddy. You're a big boy. We're going to have to learn how to buck up and say this to people, even when they're wearing overalls, even if they got a folksy accent, even if they're sitting in a tractor cab. Farmers are not poor. They are grown adults who make their own decisions, and they made a bad decision. I know we all understand that agriculture is really important. All our lives depend on it. So let me ask you this. If we have farmers that are capable of making decisions this badly, of screwing up their own operation this badly, is that the kind of person who should be trusted with something this important? Is that someone that we should be spending our energy and our money bailing them out? Or should we maybe explore bringing new people into agriculture? People who don't already have a track record of making garbage, self-defeating decisions. That's another approach that we could take. Start bringing in new people who understand that maybe they have a little bit more responsibility for how their business turns out. That's an option. We do not owe it to today's farmers to keep them in business. That is their job. They've already made their decisions and they've made their votes. And I think they should be the ones to sit with that. As a small family farmer, I will tell you that people who are in agriculture today made their decisions with eyes wide open. They are grown adults who know what they did. And as a farmer, I think it is completely fair to ask people to bear the consequences of their own decisions. That's not the public's job. So those are your thoughts for today. Quick update for me, my farm is growing. I'll try and actually do some content that's just about that. As time goes on, there's a lot of rush going on. So you get to the farm and you have to do the field prep, do the planting. There's not a lot of time left over for and now I'm going to yap into the camera. Today is my off day because it's raining. That's why I haven't been making as many videos lately. And don't worry, I'll be back one way or the other. So happy spring, guys. Y'all do good out there.